All right, welcome everybody. Hello, hello. We are back for part 2 of our FreeBSD series. And today we're going to go over a few items. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to take the system that we set up in the last video, and we're going to set up SSH. We're going to enable it on boot, and then we're going to make sure that that functions, right? And then once we do that, we're going to take a snapshot of the system. So we're going to go back and I'm going to show you how to do snapshots again. And as an added bonus, I'm going to show you how to fix that issue that your FreeBSD machine might have right now, in that whenever you try to boot the system, it may take up to 3 minutes because SynMail is going to tell you about an unqualified hostname. So we're going to take care of that very quickly. So that'll be the first thing that we want to fix. So load up your system, and once you've loaded up your system, go ahead and log in, and we will log in as root for now, just because remember we're configuring this system, so we'll start with root. And then the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to type in package install vim, and actually I'm going to say no, it's not install vim. Let's install neovim. Package install neovim. Say yes for neovim. I'm going to hit yes, and it's going to go out and it's going to fetch neovim and it's going to install that for us. And it doesn't take very long, because remember, we're using packages, we're not using source. If we were building from source, this would take a significantly longer amount of time. Once we have done that, we will type in vim, and then we're going to type /etc, so that's Echo Tango Charlie /host, and I'm doing HOST, which is Hotel Oscar Sierra Tango, and then we're going to hit tab one time. And when you hit that tab key, it's going to show you, okay, at the folder structure of Etsy, we have host ID, hosts, host.allow, host.equiv, and host.lpd. Let's just hit that final S for Sierra, and then we're going to hit enter. And what you will see here is yours is going to look different than mine because mine is already fixed. This piece right here at the end where it says FreeBSD 13 classwork. So I have FreeBSD -13 classwork, because remember, what is this? That's this right here. That's the host name of my machine. We add that to loopback, which is right here, 127.0.0.1. And by adding it to this line, and you'll see right here, there is a space in between my domain. So we add a space here and then FreeBSD -13 classwork. Now you might be asking, well, how do I know that that's my host name? If we close this, we'll type clear for now, and we just type the word host name, it will show your host name. You can actually see your host name here where it says root at FreeBSD -13 classwork. And if we type in the word host name, we can then see FreeBSD -13 classwork. And so we know that's our host name. And again, if I come back here to Etsy hosts, you will see localhost space localhost.my.domain space FreeBSD -13 classwork. And by adding that, whenever we reboot this machine, and I can actually show that to you right now, instead of having to wait for 3 attempts to figure out what the host name is for the machine, you're not going to have to do that anymore. It'll just automatically realize, okay, this machine that I am actually located at right now is the machine that I want, and then it'll just automatically boot up. So that's a quality of life improvement that we will want to use, and that's basic troubleshooting. So at this point, you can now say, hey, I've troubleshooted a problem with FreeBSD, and see, there you go. We are already right back in. So I'm going to log back in. And the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to do a package install sudo. And we're doing this for later. So we want to install sudo for now, but we're not going to use it just yet. We're just doing this so that we have it. The next thing that we want to do is we want to do package search, and I'm just going to hit enter. And you'll see that package search actually allows you to search for packages if you wanted to. You can also do switch S. I'm going to type package search SSHD, and we don't find anything, just SSH. And now we start finding some of the items that we may want to have access to. But at this point, what I want to do is package install SSHD, and there is nothing necessary. Oh, shouldn't have hit that. We don't need to do SSH, no SSHD, nothing. So the first thing that we're going to do is nvim etsy rc.conf, hit enter. And at this point, we can see what our host name is, our key map, ifconfig for our current internet connection. We're using DHCP. SSHD is enabled, so you'll see that right here. SSHD enabled, yes, which means SSH is already working. We don't have to do anything to set up SSH other than we're going to need to connect to it. So how do we do that? We're going to type in IP addr, if big. You'll have to forgive me, I'm still a Linux user. And we can now get our IP address. So I'm going to go over here to a shell, and I'm going to type in SSH J at 192.168.122.188. Enter. It's going to ask me, do I recognize the system? I'm going to state unequivocally yes. And then it's going to ask me for a password. So I'm going to use my password. And I am now in. If I type in sudo switch s, it will ask me for my password. And what we will see here is Aaron J is not on the sudoers file. So that is a little bit of a problem. So we're going to fix that right now. If we type in as root vsudo and hit enter, we can then add j all equals all. And that effectively turns your user into root. That's not always a great idea, but for the purposes of what we're doing, this should be fine. So having changed that now, if I exit and then reconnect, there we go. Then type in sudo-s, add our password, and it will now allow us in. Now it says cannot use termcap database. That's okay. In order to fix this, I will just use tmux on my local machine. You could do this as well if you don't know anything about tmux. I'll make a video about it later, but again, for the purposes of this video, I'm just going to go tmux, log into this system, test01 is my password because this is a test. You saw my password in the last video. And now, when I do sudo-s, you'll be able to see I'm now in the machine. If I type htop, can't do anything, but I am root. I can do who am I, and you'll see root is my name. If I exit out of the root and type who am I, you'll see I'm Aaron J, right? And for those of you who are my Linux users who are kind of looking at this and thinking to yourself, okay, if I were to use something like FreeBSD for potentially a server or something like this, are some of these commands that I'm going to use under Linux or Mac or even the Windows subshell for Linux, is any of that stuff going to apply here? And the answer is yes. Yes, it is going to apply. So at this point, we have set up SSH. It is already enabled on boot. And if you were going to follow this along in the class that I teach, then here is the point where you would take a screenshot of this right here. So I'm going to type echo screenshot this. Check that out. So this is the time that you would make that screenshot to demonstrate that you were able to SSH into the machine. So fantastic. We have completed that. Now, having done that, the next thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to set up passwordless SSH. So I'm going to exit out of this, and I'm going to do SSH-keygen -T, and you can see I do this all the time, right? It automatically fills in for me, and this is on my local machine. But we're using SSH keygen to make an ED25519 SSH key, and I'm going to use my email for the school. So hit enter, and I'm just going to call this FreeBSD 13 classwork dot temp dot key. I'm gonna hit enter, enter, enter. The reason why I did this is I wanted the FreeBSD 13 classwork.temp.key and the pub key. And now that I have these, I'm going to actually highlight that, copy it. I'm going to come over here, and within the description, I'm going to put the key name in the description. So I have my usernames and passwords in the description, and then I also have the key name. And the purpose of putting the key name in here is when I'm done with this and I delete this box and I'm completely finished and I get rid of all of this, I can clean up everything by going through, and I can look and I can say, okay, hey, FreeBSD 13 classwork.temp.key, that's the key that I was just using on this machine. And with this machine being gone, I can delete that key as well as remove all of the additional information that may be necessary within like my config files and so on and so forth. I can get rid of all of that and just clean up my box. What you don't want to do is leave a ton of trash inside of your machine that you're going to have to worry about later, or maybe you're going to come back and be like, oh man, ID underscore RSA, what does that go to? Is that assigned to a box? Is that something I made to do file signing with? Why do I have that? Right? We don't want to end up at that to be that person who doesn't know what the files on their system are for. So again, verbosity. We want to sit down and we want to write out the names and all of the information that we need for whatever it is that we're working on so that we have that data for later, and then we can do things like clean up or we can identify what something is for. You're not going to remember everything. I guarantee it. You might think you are, or maybe you're at that point right now where you're like, well, I'm only working on one system. Start doing good habits now. The good habits will last a lifetime. And if you follow those good habits continuously, it's going to make you a better developer. It's going to make you a better systems administrator. And it's going to make you more valuable. And it's going to be higher in likelihood that you're going to get a job and that you're going to go out there and you're going to make money. Because if you're sitting here watching this, 9 times out of 10, you're probably wanting to learn this stuff so that you can turn it into a career. And then from a career, you want to pivot into a paycheck and into everything else, right? So it all starts with a good, strong foundation. So we have done this. If I type clear, well, I have 2 files, right? So what can I do with these files? Well, we know SSH works. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually SCP the pub key, and I'm going to just add a colon at the end here. And what this is going to do is it's going to take my pub key and it's going to send it to the Aaron Jones home folder. Not applications, I just want it in home. Hit enter. It's going to ask me for my password. I provide it. You'll see that the transfer was successful. And if I come over here and I type ls, I'm actually in the root directory, sorry. Go to my home directory, and now we have the file on the machine. The next thing that we're going to want to do, even though I'm the root user, that's okay. We can fix this because we're going to make some permissions issues here, but we're going to repair all that. We're going to make a directory. It's going to be called .ssh. Remember, dot just turns it into a hidden folder. And then SSH is important because by having a .ssh folder, the SSH daemon can come in and look at that folder, and it can find things like authorized keys folder or files. So you can look inside the .ssh folder, you can find the authorized keys file, and then if your key, your pub key is in there, then you can automatically log into the system without having to provide a password. So we're going to hit enter, and we are going to move the pub key into the .ssh folder, and we're going to call it authorized keys, and we're going to hit enter. And then we're going to chmod 600 on the SSH folder, and then chmod chmod 700 on the SSH folder, chmod 600 on the authorized keys. And we may have to bump that up to 644. I'm doing this from memory, and if we have to go back, we'll just fix it. That's all part of this, right? And then the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to chown Aaron J dash SSH switch lowercase r. Oh my goodness. Under the chown. Uppercase r. But you have to do it before. Now if we do ls-lah, you're going to see Aaron J owns.ssh. We SSH ls there, we'll see authorized keys exist. So now if I do SSH -i deck key, and you can see I can log in. So all the permissions are correct. I'm able to log in using just the key, and I have access to the system. If we type something like htop, you'll see htop's not found. So what should we do? Let's do sudo pkg install htop. We're going to type in our password, and we're going to install that file. So what have we now done? Now we've added an SSH key, a pub key, into our authorized keys by typing in SSH, our username, at the IP address with a switch lowercase I, and then we reference the key, FreeBSD 13 classwork.temp.key. We can now SSH in passwordless into our box, and we can do that from our user. Okay, so having done that, the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to actually type switch p, and this is going to halt the system. And the reason why I want to halt the system is I now know SSH works. And in addition to that, I've loaded an SSH key so I can get into the system without having to provide a password. So what I want to do next is I want to take a snapshot. So the guest is no longer running, and we can do this with the machine running, but I don't like to do that. I much prefer to have the machine in a completely off state, and then I go to manage my VM snapshots. I add a new snapshot. I'm going to call this SSH underscore enabled, and then I'm going to put added SSH key, SSH enabled, passwordless login from Aaron J. Finish. And now I know that my system, whether I have a new server or now SSH enabled, I know that I can get into this system into a known good state, and the box is going to work. So the very next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to power on that virtual machine, and we will allow it to completely load, which again, because we fixed the issue with the host name, isn't going to take very long. And there it is. So I hit enter over here, and I have logged in. And we have some information that shows up every single time we log in. You'll see the version of FreeBSD that you're running. It'll say welcome to FreeBSD. It'll provide you some release note links, security advisories, tell you where the FreeBSD forums are. There's a lot of information right here already. So if you're interested in, or you end up on a FreeBSD machine and you got to start figuring out, okay, what do I do? How do I find out about security advisories? Who's got a frequently asked questions that I can check? If I want to sign up for the mailing list, how am I going to do this? All of those things are pretty much made available to you instantaneously just off of your MOTD, which is message of the day. And I also like that they do this. If you take a look here, it says to change this login announcement, see MOTD. And then it says to do a fast search for a file, try locate file name. Let's try this. So actually, let's do a locate.updateDB. We're going to let this run for a minute. And I want to see if we can locate the MOTD file. You'll have to run it using sudo. That's fine. Executing update DB as root will reveal all file names on your machine to all login users. I'm okay with that because this is testing. If we were super concerned about this, we could go back and we can change how we handle this. But for the purposes of what we're doing, we kind of need to do this because you're going to need it to be able to learn. So if I type in locate MOTD, I can now find all the MOTD related files, whether it be the template, rc.d/motd. We can see var run motd. There's a whole bunch of stuff here that we could potentially take a look at, right? So they're already kind of teaching you what you need to know about how to run commands, how to look for things, how to use stuff like locate. I bet find exists, and it does. You can walk a file hierarchy. There's a whole bunch of stuff that we can do that, again, if you come from Linux, then it's great because you're going to be able to use this system, which moves on to the next questions that we want to be able to answer now that we have taken a snapshot of the system. So what is the benefit of using SSH to manage a system even if it is local? So the box is local. It's running in a virtual machine. Why do we care about being able to use SSH to get in there? One of the tremendous benefits is I can now treat this just like I would any other system I can SSH into. So I could daisy chain, I could use it as a jump box. In addition to that, my workflow is now more in line with the traditional workflow that I work on every single day. So by having that level of standardization, that means my tips, tricks, techniques, and everything else that I do is now multi-applicable across systems, right? Whether I'm going to SSH into this FreeBSD box, or I'm going to SSH into a machine that's located out in Amsterdam, or I'm going to use an EC2 instance at Amazon, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. Whatever it is that you're going to use, your workflow stays the same. The tools that you use stay the same, and the techniques that you're going to use stay the same. And that is incredibly beneficial to you as a user in speed, ease of use, and your ability to get comfortable on a box as soon as you get there. As a Linux administrator, as a system administrator, a software developer, as a person who works on this stuff every single day in a career where I am expected to be able to move through a plethora of boxes and still be what I like to refer to as combat effective, I could not do that if I don't understand the basics and if I don't have a singular workflow that I can immediately fall back on so that I can be functional no matter what system it is that I log into. What's the saying? We don't rise to expectations, we fall to the level of our training. Well, if my training is based off of using SSH, getting into a box, having a singular unified workflow that works across all boxes, that means that I can get into a machine and I can start using tools like find, locate, I can check cron tab, I can start figuring out and doing that very high level digital forensics on a box, and I can figure out what's going on in that machine nearly instantaneously. All right. So that's the benefit to me of using SSH. Use it for a little while and then find out for yourself what are the system benefits of using SSH for you? Why does having a unified workflow work better? How does that help you prepare for a job? If you're going to walk into a place, do you want to be able to tell them that you would be effective in a Linux or Unix environment? Or do you want to be able to, or do you want to have to go in there and tell them, oh, I only really know how to use Windows. Sorry. Uh, I want a system administrator job, but if you're not running Windows on this network, buddy, I'm not going to be able to do anything. You don't want to be that person, right? So, and you'd be surprised, Microsoft has made very large strides towards becoming more user friendly for Linux administrators. So you can do things like using SSHFS, which is SSH file system, and it allows you to create a network attached drive using SSH to communicate with a box. And I can do that under Windows, Mac, Linux, all of the operating systems that I use on a daily basis, and that allows me to share files across my network at a moment's notice. So, with that said, I feel like I've given more than ample lip service to all of the benefits of setting up and using SSH. So, the next thing that we want to touch on is, what is a home directory? If I type Papa Whiskey Delta, so PWD, and I hit enter, you're going to see I am in /home/Aaron J. If I type CD space .. what that's going to do is it's going to change directory one directory back. Hit enter, type Lima Sierra or LS, hit enter. You'll see there is a folder called Aaron J and Papa Whiskey Delta PWD, hit enter. You'll see I'm now in the home directory. So for every user that you make, it can be a good practice. It's not a mandatory practice, and you'll discover that there are sometimes reasons to make a home directory outside of the home directory. But again, for the purposes of a basic low-level introduction, what's the benefit here? Well, you can keep all of your users' directories inside of a single structure. And what does that mean? Across many, many different systems, you're going to have a unified structure for keeping files, for having those files within a specific order. And in addition to that, it becomes very easy for you to start figuring out, okay, where do I need to go depending on whatever it is that I need to find or take a look at. So if I type in CD, Charlie Delta, space, AAR, so that's my username, part of my username, and I hit tab, you'll see it automatically completes for me. Start using tab now. Auto completion is your friend. It reduces keystrokes, which means less wear and tear on your body, less wear and tear on your hardware. Because remember, you're going to want to be able to use your fingers for the next 20 or 30 years. So typing something like AARON instead of just AA and hitting tab and allowing it to autocomplete. It doesn't sound like a lot of characters, but guarantee you over the span of 30 years, the more character strokes that you save, the less damage that you're going to do to your body. And it also prevents you from making mistakes. If you know the first one or two letters and hit tab, allow it to autocomplete, you can move on to the next folder, hit tab again. So I'm actually going to move, just for demonstration purposes, we'll CD to the top level directory, which is /. So this is there, you can go no higher. PWD, you'll see / is the directory that I'm in. If I type in ls, you'll see there's a whole bunch of directories in there. We have bin, boot, dev, entropy, etc, home, lib, libexec, media, mount, net, proc, rescue, root, sbin, sys, temp, user, var, zroot. We even have a little file called copyright, and I can type CAT or Charlie Alpha Tango, CO, hit tab, hit enter, and now I even have the copyright file that we can go through here. Scrolling all the way up, you can see that this is 8.2 Berkeley, and it shows you all of the rules related to using this. Another thing that you can do is you can type TAC, so Tango Alpha Charlie, and then CO, hit tab, and oh, interesting, sudo package install TAC. Doesn't exist under FreeBSD. That's incredibly fascinating to me. Under a Linux box, we can type cat tac, and uh, it'll automatically display the file contents on the screen, but in reverse order. So cat top to bottom, tac bottom to top. Under Linux, under FreeBSD, I guess that's not there. So I would have to look into how to resolve that. But we're going to go back to what we were dealing with previously. So pwd, I'm at that root directory, ls, we can see all the stuff in there. We know that we want to get to home and we want to go to Aaron J. So I'm going to type in cd space ho. So that's Hotel Oscar, hit tab, going to autocomplete to ME. And then I'm going to type in A, hit tab, Aaron J, hit enter, ls, nothing is in there yet, and that's okay, but now I am back, pwd, in the home Aaron J directory. Okay, so what do we use that for? Home Aaron J, that's my user account directory. If I type ls-lah, we'll see all the hidden stuff in there as well. And you can see here that we have Aaron J as the owner of all of these files. If I touch new underscore file, ls, I have made a new file, ls-lah. You'll see the new file now exists right down here. And this piece right here in the front, -rw, -r, -r, -, that's a visual representation of the permissions for the file. It means the owner can read write, the group can read, and I believe others can read this file as well. And then if there was X's in there, that would mean that the file is executable and so on and so forth. Size-wise, 0 bytes, there's nothing in it. The file was created June 27th at 21:45. The file is called new file, and then the owner of the file is Aaron J, and the group that owns the file is called Aaron J. So I actually have my own group as well. That's a high level overview of permissions. We're going to get into that more later. Permissions are super important. Whatever system it is that you're using, I guarantee you're going to use permissions at some point. So that's the home directory. We can put files in there. We can use it to store things. We can mount devices into your home directory. There's a ton of stuff that you can do within the home directory. And as you develop your skills, you're going to discover maybe you want to do torrents. Maybe you want to use Tor. Maybe you want to set up an anonymous file share using SFTP or something like that. All of that can be done out of a home directory. So what's the temp directory for? cd/tmp, hit enter, ls, nothing in there, pwd, tmp. We can write files to the temp directory, and then when you reboot the box, typically they disappear. Okay? So I'm going to touch new file, and we're going to experiment with this. Let's try. So we have a new file inside of that directory. I'm going to reboot the box, and I'm going to get ready to be able to log in again. And let's see if that file is still there inside of temp. Under a Linux machine, the temp directory would automatically clear once you have done a reboot. Let's find out. Does it work under FreeBSD? This is a good time for you to ask yourself, do you think it will or do you think it won't? Is that a difference between Unix and Linux? And the nice thing is as we test this hypothesis, we're going to get our answer, right? So machine is up and running, cd temp, ls, and the new file still exists. So does that mean our temp file is different under Unix? Yes, yes it does. Under a Linux machine, you put stuff into temp, and then you reboot the machine, and then those items potentially disappear. Under a FreeBSD machine, that does not necessarily happen. And if I type in htop, you'll see I do have 2 gigabytes worth of swap on this machine. Lots of really cool things that you can do. So Under a Unix machine, what is the temp directory for? You can use it to temporarily store files and then get rid of them as necessary. If you notice, I didn't have to sudo up to be able to write to that directory. Lots of people can move files into temp, and if you reboot the box, that temp file should still survive under a Unix machine like FreeBSD. If you do it under Linux, it's potentially not going to survive. Okay. Let's do the rest of our answers here. So we talked about temp, we talked about home. All right, let's talk about path. So what is path? Path is a variable. We type in echo $path, hit enter. You're going to see as my user, whenever I want to run an application, these are the places where the system will look for that application. So the first thing it will do is it'll look in sbin /sbin, which exists right here. So it's going to look there first. Then it's going to look under /bin right there. And then it's going to look under /user /bin right here. And then it's going to look under user local sbin. And then it's going to look under user local bin. And then finally, if you were to create a folder called bin under your home directory, so pwd cd, and a shortcut is hold shift and hit the tilde, and you will be able to automatically go to your home directory. And so if we mkdir bin, go in here, and then we were to touch, let's call this my test app.sh, which sh echo. And you might be looking at this and thinking to yourself, okay, what is this guy doing? Don't worry. You're going to learn about some of this stuff later. This is kind of a taste of what you can do. And remember, I'm just doing this from memory. chmod plus x, my test, and then I'm going to do lslah so that you can actually see I have made this executable. And another thing that I want to do is echo world. And if we run it, it says it says hello world as part of my application, right? So if I were to type, and I can actually, let's go. I can go out of that directory. So even though I am not inside the bin directory, I am one directory removed. I can run my test app.sh as though I was in the bin directory. Why? Because echo $path tells the system where to look for applications. So it's actually going all the way to here, home, Aaron J, bin, whenever I ask it to run this application, and then it is running the application from there. So path is very powerful. You can either add files to path as necessary, or you can edit the path and you can put directories into the path and then put files there so you can run applications from there. But this is where path is where the system looks to figure out, okay, where do I look to find applications to run? So whenever you do something like which htop, you'll see user local bin htop is where htop is coming from. So is user local bin listed? It absolutely is right here. User local bin, and then the application htop is in there. And that's where it gets installed whenever you use pkg to do a package, right? So path describes the path to look for applications. So how do we find out what our shell is? If we know $path tells us the path, what if we type in echo $shell bin sh. And so we know now that bin sh is our shell. Sh is our shell, and it's located inside of bin, right? Uh, so what's a shell? The shell is what you're actually working with here. If we type in bash, bash is not found. Bash is typically what you use. If we were to go here and I said which bash, you would find under Linux, user bin bash is available. Under Unix, however, if we type in which tc, that's not on there. Which sh, that shows up. I don't think anything else is installed, but what we can do is sudo package install fish, and it will ask me, hey, do you want to install fish? I'm going to say yes. Give it a few seconds. Type in fish, and now I'm in the fish shell, which fish is the friendly interactive shell, right? Present working directory, all of that still works. You'll see now there's a little bit of color, whereas before everything was black and white. I can touch a file, chmod plus x, that font, hit ls, nothing's really changing, but there is a little bit of color and things like that. I'm going to exit out of fish for now. We'll come back to that alternative shell, but at this point, I'm going to go in here into bin. I'm going to remove my test app, and to answer the question, how do you find out what your shell is? Echo $shell. What is your shell? Well, $shell. Our shell is currently sh. And are there alternative shells? Absolutely. Bash, Zsh, fish, tons of alternative shells, actually. There's way more than even that. And then, do you think it's worth using an alternative? Sometimes. To me, it is. I like fish. I use fish. I install OMF, which is Oh My Fish, and then I install fish. And we'll do that. We're going to make some changes at some point. Maybe not right now, but that's coming. And once you do that, you'll have an alternative shell that does things like code completion. It'll command completion, I guess is what it would actually be called. It allows you to do a whole bunch of extra stuff. Is there extra weight to it? Yeah, absolutely. Is it a workflow that you can use across every system? Not necessarily. So you can never stop understanding how to use some of the other systems, because you may get to a server where you can't install fish, but this is still useful. Still use it. It's still useful. You should use it, right? So with that said, that answers that final question. And just to recap, we resolved our issue with the hostname. We set up SSH. We allowed ourselves to SSH into the box without an SSH, without a password. And then we went over multiple questions related to where's the home directory, where's the temp directory, what is the root directory. We also covered adding files, deleting files, creating an application, understanding path, and understanding shell. So this gives you just a very high level overview of Unix, FreeBSD, and now you're getting this opportunity to start playing around with the system. And as we move through some more of these videos and some more of these assignments that you'll be working on, that will give you even more opportunity to learn how to use this system that, again, will be applicable as we round ourselves way back around whenever we start playing with Linux again. So thank you for joining me this evening. I had a lot of fun building this, and I hope a little bit more quality is coming through. I got a light. I put up a green screen. We're going to see if we can't make these videos even better. So thanks for joining me, and I will talk to you all later.